Hey guys, Red Master, and today, of course, like I said, it's Friday, so Red Tutorial Series. Yesterday, I said that we would be going into the factions now, and that is what we are going to do. So this will span the course of about 6 episodes, one for each faction, of course, and then from there, I guess, I still have yet to plan what I'm doing, but until then, we're going to go over Vikings today. Now, to start off with the Vikings, they are, how do you say, they're basically based around strength buffs to buff up your attack and freezing. They do have some elements of dragons in there and wind movements, which is what they're used for nowadays. But primarily what you'll see in Vikings are, units with big attacks, overall just strong units such as Rune Warrior, Master at Arms, and whatnot. So, today I'm going to go over all of the cards in the Viking category. I'm going to start it off with Gale Force. Gale Force, 1 gold spell, a common spell. It knocks an enemy 5 spaces away from your side. This is an example, first of all, of the wind aspect of Vikings, the whole movement forward or back. This one is primarily to push an enemy away, but it's not very strong and it's not really used. The only time you'll see it played is if someone pulls it from like a flux harvest. So not that strong overall, especially since your enemy can probably get back to where it was the next turn or the next 2 turns. But yeah. Next you have Ice Weaving. It is a 1 gold, another Viking spell. It's a basic, so you can get it once you defeat a Viking deck, once you defeat the Viking AI, I should say. But this card is is an example of the freeze aspect. So what Ice Weaving does, you're dealing 1 damage to a target and then freezing it in its spot. And as you can see in the little text box to the side, freeze movement is reduced by 2 during the target's next turn. So that can really immobilize a unit or just reduce its movement by 2. So you'll either get to move 1 space in all directions, up, down, back, forward, or you have a unit that can't move. So that's your 2 movement units, such as Maddie, Warrior, etc. The freeze aspect could come in handy if you're trying to stop an enemy advance, or if you have a combo set up with a card that's coming later down the road, and I'll get to that in a minute. But overall, Ice Weaving is probably another card you won't see included in all decks. Maybe if you're starting out the game, you want to throw it in there, or if you pull it from a Flux Harvest again, like the Gale Force. Next, you have Lightning Bolt, another basic card. So you're going to get this by defeating the Viking AI. You're dealing 2 damage to a random enemy for 1 gold. That's okay, but again, the problem is that random aspect. You're not controlling where the lightning will strike, which could be annoying if you're trying to get a certain unit out of the field, such as that Sea Witch or Acolyte, because you don't want those things to start growing in health or strength from the units they generate. But yeah, Lightning Bolt's a little bit tricky to use. Again, primarily you'll see it out of a Flux Harvest. Most people don't include this in the deck, in the decks that they make. But if you're starting out, I think this is an okay card. There's one of the Warlocks with the same ability, sorta, you'll see it when we get to the Viking video, and I'll compare it back to Lightning Bolt. Next in the line, we have Lightning Mace. Again, another 1 gold spell, common this time, so you're gonna have to pull this from a pack. it's simple. You can just see it there. Focus, deal 3 damage. If you don't know what focus does, make sure to check out my tutorial on focus. I kind of did a little backstory about this card already, but I'll go over it again since it's been a while. Lightning Mace, you have to be next to a target in order to use this, so whatever you want, you're going to have a unit next to it, and it just simply deals 3 damage, so it's handy if you're trying to get a bit extra damage. You know, it works on the castle too, so, you know, if you have a unit right by the castle, you can play Lightning Mace. It does an additional 3 damage, so you don't have to worry about that later. But I think you would really see this in focus decks, if anything, not like an automatic add-in to a deck. Next we have Call to War. Now we're getting to the 2 gold spells. Call to War simply summons a random unit costing 3 gold or less. That could be anything useful or anything, how should I say, unhelpful. I should say unhelpful for that. I say unhelpful in the sense that you could block off a summoning space with a guard tower or Colossus. I've seen it happen before. It's not uncommon, but the chances of you getting that are pretty rare, considering all the other 2 gold costing units, or 3 or less costing units, I should say, out there. You can definitely see a variety of things being summoned. And overall, if you're starting out, I say this is a great addition. If you don't have that many units, this is definitely a card that you could place in. And again, if you have 3, which you should by defeating a Viking deck, you should be able to summon those units to help you out if you're low on them. Next, we move on to Dragon Bolt. Dragon Bolt, okay. I definitely think if you're running a dragon deck with Vikings, you should definitely include Dragon Bolt. It's one of the primary cards of them. I mean, aside from all the dragons and whatnot, this is probably the most useful spell for them. What you're doing is you're dealing 2 damage, and which is okay, you know, it's like the lightning bolt. But the benefit of this is your next dragon plate costs 3 less. That's really efficient in getting out some early dragons, or even later dragons sooner, such as a 7 gold Dremoth, or a 6 gold Rakanoth. I would say just include Dragon Bolt in any dragon deck, really. If you're not playing dragon, I would stay away from it, and since it's an epic, you know, if you're wanting to build a dragon deck, just be aware, this card is not that easy to find. Next we move on to Dragon Taming, the lesser of the 2 dragon spells. Well, I guess 3, because the next one is also a dragon spell, but simply Dragon Taming, you're adding 2 random drakes to your hand. That could be okay if you're trying to get an early dragon to your hand, like a Faithful or an Ice, or even a Fire Drake, but it can be, it could be a, how do you say, just, it'd be ineffective if you draw a Stone Drake or Green Drake too early. So really, Dragon Taming is based on luck. I wouldn't say run this card heavily if you're in a dragon deck. I know it's like, you know, you see dragon and it's like, bam, I gotta put it in a dragon deck. I would try to stay away from this one, to be honest. The random aspect can hurt you in the end, so. And of course, if you already have all the dragons, since most of them are neutral, they can be thrown in any sort of deck, so. I would say, you know, not that fond of Dragon Taming as a card. Hardened Scales. 2 gold. Gives a dragon +2/+2. Again, when compared to Dragon Bolt, this spell is lesser, but it's definitely greater to have over Dragon Taming. That extra buff could give a card like Shadow Drake, Ice Drake, or Faithful Drake some extra strength to get some early damage onto the enemy castle, or even later game to buff up a bigger dragon like Villaroth, Aeroth, etc. So I would say definitely, if you're running a dragon deck, I would try to find these. But make sure you prioritize bolts over scales. Next, moving on to Shattering Strike. Here's the card I told you about that links up with Ice Weaving. It simply destroys a frozen target, so a target that you've frozen with maybe Frozen Storm, which is a card later on I'll explain, or Ice Weaving, can instantly be destroyed. So it's okay getting rid of that pesky Craxus. I mean, the combo only costs you 3 gold to do successfully. But not, I wouldn't say this is an auto-include in any sort of deck that you're running. Just because the chances that you might be able to pull off this combo, you have to draw 2 of the certain cards in your hand, so I wouldn't have this card in every deck I use. Tower of Winter, 2 golds. It's a building, of course, as you can see in the description. It has a Frost Aurora, which, if you're unaware, damages and frees enemies in a 3x3 area surrounding the tower. And of course, you know what freeze does. So it kind of corresponds with the whole Viking aspect of freezing a target, makes it immobile, or only gives it 1 movement. But I would say tower's okay. I've seen it played a couple times. I think it really just is a way to slow enemies down. I know it's pesky to get rid of if you're the opposing side, but I really think I don't think you can have a hard time getting rid of this overall. Next, we move on to Freezing Pillar. Freezing Pillar is kind of similar to Tower of Winter in the fact that it's a frost. It gives off a frost aura. But the difference is its health and its classification. It's classified as an obstacle, meaning it's going to hurt both targets, as opposed to Tower of Winter, which only will hurt the enemy units. It also got more health simply because normally obstacles go into a sort of hand-in-hand with units with knockback, such as Earth Knight, Berserker, to really push on the enemy base and damage. If you're playing an obstacle deck, I would say include this card, because there's only a certain combo I know of that really goes, that really speaks obstacle. So, but if I was playing another Viking deck, I wouldn't really want to include this, simply because it's a target, and your enemy can simply just avoid it by going another route. So all that really does is slow down the opponent, and maybe you, depending on where you put it. So, if you're running an obstacle deck, I would say that's where Freezing Pillar is strongest. Next up is Rampage, one of the more effective Viking spells. You're giving a damage unit Rampage, the ability to move and attack again after it has successfully done a first attack. Rampage is a very useful ability to have, and I think making it a card is stronger as well. You're having that extra attack given to any unit on the field. That could be from a White Knight, Dremoth, Master at Arms. Those big guys can get a Rampage and terrorize the board. And it works on little guys too, if you want to have them run around, do some more damage. But I would save Rampage, and conserve it for a bigger unit. But that's simply what Rampage is. Spear Strike, similar to Lightning Mace, except more expensive, and it does a chain damage of 1 to all connected enemies. I think Lightning Mace is better, to be honest. I wouldn't prioritize Spear Strike over Lightning Mace, simply because you're getting the same damage. And again, really, if you're running focus decks, then I would start to consider Spear Strike. Other than that, I wouldn't really want to include this deck anywhere else other than a focus deck. If you pull it out of a random spell, that's fine, but overall, nah. Frozen Storm, 4 gold now. You're knocking all enemy units back 2 spaces and freezing them. This card, I mean, it used to be better in the sense that you originally got to move all your units So it's kind of like the Wind Mage now. It kind of used to be like the Wind Mage, but the benefit over Frozen Storm again is that freezing aspect. So if you play a Frozen Storm, you have, if you have a Shattering Strike, you can go ahead and destroy a big creature that you froze, such as a Craxus or something like that. But overall, I would say Frozen Storm. If I had to choose one or the other between that and Wind Mage, I would go Wind Mage over Frozen Storm. Hall of Winds. A card you get by defeating the Viking deck again. Each turn, you're knocking all targets one space away from your side. It's okay. I mean, not really, especially because of all the other wind cards out there. I think this is probably the weakest one, or the most problematic one, because it's moving itself as well. I've seen ways to make it a bit more effective, but I mean, overall, I would say there are better wind options than this card. I'm not dissing the card. It is a basic, and it's your first kind of card that revolves around the whole wind movement. But if you're a more experienced player and have a bigger collection, there are definitely better wind options than Hall of Winds. And speaking of better wind options, that's what we're going to get into with the Wind Mage here. Wind Mage overall as a unit sucks. In terms of stats, I should say. It's 1 attack, 2 health, makes it a very big target. It can't destroy anything, and it can't defend itself much. The benefit of Wind Mage, however, is that ability, that initiative to knock everything on the board 2 spaces away from your side. So that can be used to position an attack, get in range of the castle, etc. And that's where Wind Mage right now is its strongest. Just being able to move everything over 2 spaces. Next is Aeroth. I talked about Aeroth being, dragon, a dragon card primarily. I mean, he's a dragon, but where I benefit Aeroth is really to just give that your dragons 1 attack and 1 movement. So, say you have a couple of lower drakes on the field, you play Aeroth, they're instantly getting that extra attack and movement to attack castle, enemy units, buildings, etc. But overall, if I wasn't playing a dragon deck, I wouldn't just go and add an Aeroth. Next is Ice Blast. Ice Blast is, I think, maybe your final card. I think it's your final card that has to do with the freezing aspect of everything. You're dealing 2 damage to all enemies in a 5x5 area and freezing them. The 2 damage could be okay. I wish it was more for 5 gold, like maybe 3. But then again, there were issues with cards like this being 3 damage. So, I would say the benefit out of Ice Blast 2 is freezing them. It just gives you some more time if you need it to get some guys away from your side. Minotaur Strike. It's a cute card. I'm not gonna lie. I don't primarily use this card, nor do I see it used very often. As you can see, you're dealing 5 damage to a target. That's kind of obvious. It's focus that makes it okay, but if you have a Minotaur, it's dealing 2 more damage. So, I would say, my primary instinct would say to be, if you're running a Viking monster deck, then, throw this in there for extra damage. But then again, you don't know when you're getting that Minotaur. Not to mention that it's 5 gold. That's a big price to pay when there are other options for your monster deck. But I think it's just an interesting concept overall. There was a card back pre-Return to Monster Island that a couple of players may know, and if you do know, you can post in the comments, that used to kind of deal a similar ability. dealing damage and more depending on another aspect. But I wouldn't just go and include Minotaur Strike in a monster deck. There are better options. But overall, I think it's a cute card to have, especially, you know, now that Minotaur is a card. You know, the art used to go towards another card, but I'm glad to see they actually adapted it to the Minotaur. Temple of the Five Gods is next, and this is probably the more useful building of the Viking faction. Your units gain Chain Lightning for 5 gold. Now, the chain is okay, to be honest. Just that 1 damage is really kind of like, alright, I can just connect it to a couple enemies, but you're gonna have to do that multiple times if you want it to be effective. Like, you know, a couple of consecutive attacks with Chain Lightning can really put a hurt on positioning of units, positioning, you know, take out buildings and whatnot. But I would, you know, maybe include 1 or 2 if you're, you know, starting out, because again, it is that basic card, so you might need that extra damage. Winds of the Nord, one of the final cards to deal with the wind movement aspect of the Vikings. It is a legendary, and what you're essentially doing is pulling everything over 1 space to your side. Now that would be the castle too. The reason why it's legendary is because once that castle moves, it can be tough to get around. Your enemy units are going to have to take more time to move around the castle in order to get into a striking position onto your base. But overall, Winds of the North, you know, you're just wasting 5 gold to move them 1 space when essentially it doesn't really matter where the castle is. Yeah, I wouldn't go and include this in a deck. Just because of its, you know, its cost, and you know, you're only pulling it 1 space. Ludicrous Strength. We made that jump from 5 to 7. There are no 6 gold costing cards within the Vikings. But Ludicrous Strength is a big basic Viking card. You're giving a melee unit 5/5. That can be big when played on Rune Warrior, when it can be played on anything, and they become this big unit that your enemy prioritizes to get rid of. First, you know, if you're definitely starting out and you're wanting, you know, you do have all the basic cards, I would say throw a Ludicrous Strength or 2 within a deck. Definitely useful when you need that extra damage, and I just think it's a great card. Rune Warrior, your basic card, your basic high costing card when you're defeating a Viking deck. 6/7 stats for 7 gold with Rampage. Very good card. In the past, the Vikings I've played, I've thrown in 2 or 3 Rune Warriors into a deck. It's very useful. The Rampage can get me some extra damage onto the opponent's castle, or it can help me clear out some of the guys that are on the board. But Rune Warrior, I think, is a very good card to have, and being its basic, just increases how well it is. Next up is War Party. War Party used to be a very good card, now it's not so much. It's a card that deals with Rampage. You're giving all your units Rampage, but you're reducing their movement by 1. This is a problem simply because you're relying on movement for Rampage. You know, the higher the movement, the more effectiveness you're going to get out of the Rampage. If you have cards that are boosting speed, such as Swiftness, or, you know, a unit that has 5 movement, play War Party, drops down to 4 movement, that's still pretty good. But again, its cost is pretty expensive. So, I mean, the chances you're going to see War Party being played are very limited nowadays, as opposed to what it used to be. Next, you have Master at Arms. Master at Arms is your one of the powerhouses of the deck. It's a 5/9, but its initiative makes it a 9/9 for about 2 turns, I think. Its 8 gold is definitely worth the price, and 4 movement as well. You could definitely get a couple of good kills off of Master at Arms, you know, if you want to deal with a Fenrir, Rune Warrior, etc. on the base. Rune Warrior is definitely a good removal for it. Next we move over to the Yarharm Giant. Yarharm is an event card, so I'm not going to go too far into this. If you want to see my analysis on Yarharm Giant, go to my limited event card video, but just to put it simply, 5/10, good base stat line, is chain of 2, and knockback of 4 can really pull off some good damage, so I think 8 gold is pretty worth it for Yarharm. Next we move over to Fenrir. Fenrir is another card that has Rampage, and its stats are kind of, you know, you subtract 1 off the attack, you plus 1 to health. That's kind of what you're dealing with here from Rune Warrior. Its 9 gold, I think, is worth it due to the fact that it has 4 movement, so it just can come up, smack a unit, next thing you know, smack 5 on the base, and depending on where you are in the game, that's either game over or you're put at a disadvantage. Normally when I run a certain Viking deck, I like to include this card in there. 1 or 2 maybe, but, you know, 3 if I'm feeling like this card will be stronger in the deck that I'm running. And its initiative to reveal all stealth units is okay, not a primary focus of the card though. Fist of the 5 Gods, this is your 9 gold focus spell. You're dealing 5 damage to an enemy and then also 5 to everything connected to it. This is okay if you're running, I think to have this in a focus deck is where you're going to get a lot of damage off, so I would say include a lot of, include Fist of the 5 Gods. I was going to say a lot of this, but realizing it's 9 gold. I would say maybe 1 or 2, because that would be about 10 damage to the castle if you pull them off both on the castle. And of course 5 to connected enemies can really do some damage on buildings and weaker game units. Finally we have Ragnar. I disenchanted Ragnar a while back. I really think I should just craft him again. I'll just create one now, just so I can have that. Ragnar is a sort of like a weaker version of the Giant. It deals more chain lightning, but doesn't have that knockback that Yarm does. I think 10 gold is a little bit overpriced, but then again, it's an 8/10 really, so I'm guessing that that should be a fair cost in the end. I'm thinking about what else to say for Ragnar really. It's chain lightning of 4, higher than most other chains in the game. So if you want to run something like a chain deck, I would definitely include Ragnar in it. So that's all the Viking cards. Now, as you can see, right now they primarily deal off of some big damage and a lot of wind and freezing. I think it's probably weaker to early game though, because a lot of your big things aren't coming in until later. Ragnar, Fenrir, Giant, Master, Rune Warrior. And its early game is kind of weak, as you can see, with all of these little basic spells. So I would say it's definitely weaker to a bit early game. But that's about it for the Vikings. Just to show you what Vikings are, we're just going to jump straight into a live match here. Just waiting for my opponent to get on. I'm going to be using the Viking decks primarily. The Viking starter, I think, just because I want to mess around with them a bit. You can send me a challenge either way. I don't mind. Sorry, this is the problems of doing things just right out of the bat. So as you can see here, these are default decks that are what you can be starting with. So let me just try the Viking starter. These are a lot of neutral cards, seeing as how a lot of the game primarily bases off neutral. I'll see if I can throw in a Viking card or two just to show. Yeah, but right now you're getting a lot of, yeah. You're not getting that strong of a selection here. Which is disappointing. I think what they should do is definitely add more Viking aspects to a mono starter deck that's based around Vikings. But it's argued that there aren't a lot of units to focus around Vikings, so. We do the Temple of the Five Gods, that's okay for a building. There's the Rune Warrior. I see that Flame Prince in the quarter getting stronger and stronger. I should probably try to make some efforts to get to him. Tough choice there between the Temple and the Judge. I think the Judge, which I pulled off very well to get rid of the Drake, I think that was kind of worth it. Okay, there's another Barbarian. Okay, here's where I think I'm going to just diverge off a bit. Strike off that peasant rat combination there. I should make some effort to get to the castle, but you know. Alright. That chain positioning was... oh no. Alright, well, there goes my Dark Bender, which I think I was going to use. Oh well. That's okay though, we do have our trusty Rune Warrior, and you can see this Rampage is going to be very effective in getting over to the other side. Again, he does have that Flame Prince. He's getting more and more attacked by the minute. Okay, so he is able to take out a Rune Warrior. And summons a Griffin in its place. And he's starting to move that Flame Prince up. Which is not good. Technical difficulty there. I have to reload. Sorry if you see a black screen right now. It's had to just freeze on me. Let's see. Okay. Oh, shoot. Forgot. That's a misplay by me. He's gonna fly right over. Another Windfall. See where this guy can hit. that Flame Prince is becoming pretty deadly there. Ouch, I did not want to see that. And the call to war gets him a Ramrus. Okay. So here's where sudden death kicks in. So we cleared out that effectively. I don't know what else he has in his hand. He moves forward that Ramrus, followed by a swordsman. Okay. I do need to get some. Oh, followed by barbarian. That's nice. However, this is gonna end game as we just do that rune warrior. We'll throw this down. Get a little archer there. So, of course, the starter decks don't really focus on the aspect of Viking. I just thought it would be neat to go over, the starter decks, show how, if you're a starting player, they're not that bad to use. Anyway, this has been the Viking tutorial video. I really don't know how much of a tutorial if it was an analysis, but I'm just going to put it in the tutorial series because, well, if you're learning the game, you should learn the factions and what they kind of do and whatnot. Next week we will cover the Crusaders, but until then, guys, stay gaming.